The island of Acheron was a festering wound in the bright blue flesh of the sea. It was not an island of sand and palm trees, but of jagged black rock that wept a constant thin mist, hiding its shores from the sun. And from its heart, every 9 years, a ship with sails of funeral black would emerge, cutting through the waves towards the mainland kingdoms. It was the tribute ship, and its cargo was despair. For generations, the sorcerer king, Moros, had ruled Acheron. He was a man who had traded his humanity for power, his form now a shifting, shadowy thing housed in a palace of obsidian that pierced the island's perpetual gloom. But his true weapon, the source of his dominion over the seas and his terror over the coastal cities, was the Siren. It was not a creature of beauty and song, but a horror born of salt and sorrow, a hybrid of woman and something ancient and scaled that dwelled in a labyrinth of sea caves beneath the palace. The Siren's voice was not a lure, but a weapon, a psychic shriek that could shatter a ship's timbers, drive a crew mad, or cause storms to drown entire fleets. And so, every 9 years, to sate the monster and buy a fragile peace, the mainland sent tribute. Not gold or jewels, but youth. 7 young men and 7 young women, chosen by lot, were sent to Acheron. They were never seen again. They were the Siren's due. In the proud, sun-drenched city of Helios, the lot had fallen, and the black ship was in the harbor. Among the chosen was Lyra, a weaver, yes, daughter, with eyes the color of a summer sky and a spirit too bright for the shadow that now fell upon her. Her brother, Kaelen, watched from the crowded quay, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. He was broad-shouldered and strong, a warrior trained, but the law was the law. The tribute was chosen by fate, and to interfere was to condemn the city to Moros's wrath. "I will not let you go," Kaelen whispered to her, his voice thick. Lyra placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You must. The city needs peace." "Peace, bought with your life, is no peace at all," he growled. As the 14 tributes were herded up the gangplank, a plan, desperate and mad, crystallized in Kaelen's mind. He was a prince of Helios, but he would not hide behind his title. He pushed through the mourning crowd, his eyes fixed on the ship's captain, a gaunt man with skin the color of bleached driftwood. "Take me," Kaelen said, his voice cutting through the wails of the crowd. The captain sneered. "The number is set, princeling, 14. "Then take 13. I will be the 14th. I will go in my sister's place." He turned to Lyra. "Go home." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Such a thing was unheard of. The captain seemed to consider, a cruel smile playing on his lips. A prince of Helios would be a fine prize for Moros. He nodded, and Lyra was pulled, sobbing and protesting from the plank. Kaelen boarded the ship of the damned. As the black sails filled with a foul wind, he looked back at his fading city, not knowing if he would ever see its white walls again. The journey to Acheron was a descent into another world. The sun faded, the air grew cold, and the very sea seemed to grow heavy and silent. When the jagged outline of the island appeared, Kaelen felt a dread that was more than fear. It was a physical weight, a suffocating despair that seeped from the rock itself. They were marched through the grim streets of a silent gray city, up a winding path to the obsidian palace of Moros. The throne room was vast and dark, lit only by a sickly green phosphorescence that pulsed from the walls. Moros sat upon a throne of fused bone, his form flickering between that of an old weary king and a monstrous shadow with eyes of ember. "A prince of Helios," Morris's voice echoed, a sound like grinding stones. "How noble. Your sacrifice will be especially satisfying. But know this, little prince, you do not go to a simple death. You go to the Labyrinth of Echoes. The Siren does not merely consume flesh. She feeds on hope, on memory, on the very self. You will be lost long before you are devoured." The tributes were taken not to a dungeon, but to the mouth of a great cave that opened like a maw at the base of the palace. It exhaled a damp, salty breath, and from its depths came a faint, discordant hum that set their teeth on edge. This was the entrance to the labyrinth. As they stood there, paralyzed by terror, a figure emerged from a side passage. It was a young woman, her hair the color of moonlight, dressed in simple gray robes. Her eyes, a startling silver, met Kaelen's. She was Alara, the daughter of Moros. "You are the one who took his sister's place," she said, her voice soft yet clear. "I am," Kaelen replied, wary. "I have watched the tributes come and go for many cycles," she said, her gaze falling to the stone floor. "I have heard their screams echo in the halls of my home. My father's power has corrupted everything, even me. But I can help you." She held out a small silver spindle, onto which was wound a fine, almost invisible thread. It glimmered with a soft, internal light. "This is Starlight," she explained. "It is spun from the light of stars that manage to pierce our gloom. It cannot be broken, and it will not be lost, no matter how deep you go. Tie it here at the entrance. It will lead you back, if you survive." Kaelen took the spindle. It was warm in his hand. "Why help me?" "Because my father is wrong," she whispered, her silver eyes glistening, "and this horror must end. But the labyrinth is not just a maze of stone. It is a living thing, shaped by the Siren's voice. It will show you things, memories, fears, illusions. The thread will guide your feet, but you must guard your mind. The Siren's true voice does not speak to your ears, but to your soul." With a final, lingering look, Alara melted back into the shadows. Kaelen tied the end of the thread to an outcrop of rock at the entrance. He turned to the other terrified tributes. "Stay here. I will find a way to end this, or I will not return." He stepped into the darkness, the thread unreeling behind him, a fragile tether to the world of light. The labyrinth was worse than he could have imagined. It was not silent. It was filled with a cacophony of whispers, echoes of past tributes, the ghost of their terror. The walls themselves seemed to shift and breathe, the passages twisting and turning in impossible ways. Without the thread, he would have been lost in minutes. Soon, the illusions began. He rounded a corner and saw his sister, Lyra, standing in a pool of sunlight, beckoning him to safety. Her voice was perfect. "Kaelen, this way. You're free." His heart leapt, but the thread in his hand pulled taut in the opposite direction. He closed his eyes, remembering Alara's warning, and pushed past the phantom. Deeper he went, and the labyrinth preyed on his doubts. He saw visions of his father, the king, shaking his head in disappointment. "A fool's errand, my son. You have thrown your life away for nothing." He saw his city in ruins, his people blaming him for provoking Moros. Each vision was a dagger, but the steady, unwavering pull of the starlight thread kept him anchored to his purpose. The air grew colder, the salt spray thicker. The humming was louder now, a dissonant vibration that made his bones ache. He began to see the remnants of previous tributes. Not bones, but worse. Faded outlines scratched into the walls, a single discarded sandal, a lock of hair tied around a stone. They were echoes of lives, absorbed and discarded by the labyrinth. He came to a vast cavern, so large the ceiling was lost in darkness. A subterranean sea filled most of it, its black water lapping against a rocky shore. In the center of the cavern, on a small island of rock, stood the Siren. It was a grotesque parody of life. From the waist up, it had the form of a woman, but her skin was pallid and slick, like a fish's belly. Her hair was a mass of black seaweed, and her eyes were solid black, depthless pools. From the waist down, she was a monstrous fusion of eel and crustacean, with powerful coiling tentacles and jagged, chitinous plates. Her mouth was open, and from it came the debilitating hum, a sound that promised oblivion. But as Kaelen drew his sword, the humming stopped. The silence was more terrifying than the noise. Then her true voice spoke, not aloud, but directly into his mind. "Why do you struggle, little spark? I see the fire in you. It is bright. I am so very cold." The voice was not monstrous. It was achingly lonely, filled with an ancient, profound sorrow. It rifled through his memories, pulling at his deepest vulnerabilities. "You fight for them? For the ones who sent their children to die for 9 generations? They are cowards. You are a tool to them, a story they will tell to make themselves feel brave." Images of the Heliotic Council, old men nodding in grim satisfaction at his sacrifice, flashed in his mind. The doubt the labyrinth had planted began to bloom. "Stay with me," the siren crooned. "Your warmth. It has been so long since I felt warmth. Do not fight. Let go. It does not have to be pain. It can be peace, an end to striving, an end to fear." The offer was seductive. The weight of his quest, the terror of the maze, the burden of hope. It would be so easy to lay it all down. He felt his sword arm grow heavy, but then he thought of Lyra's face on the key. He thought of Ilara's silver eyes, her own quiet rebellion against the darkness. He thought of the 14 lives waiting at the entrance depending on him. He was not a tool, he was a choice. "No," Kaelen said aloud, his voice echoing in the vast cavern. "I am not here for them. I am here for me, for my sister, for the future." He took a step forward and the siren's illusion shattered. Her sorrowful face twisted into a mask of rage, and she let out a physical shriek that shook the cavern, sending stalactites crashing into the black water. She surged forward, her tentacles lashing out like whips. The battle was not one of strength, but of will and precision. Kaelen was agile, dodging the crushing blows of her limbs, but her psychic assaults were relentless. She showed him visions of his own death, of Lyra being taken anyway, of Ilara being punished for her betrayal. He fought through them, his grip on the Starlight thread as firm as his grip on his purpose. He saw a pattern in her attacks, a rhythm. She was powerful, but slow to change direction. He feinted left, and as a massive tentacle slammed down where he had been, he leapt onto it, using it as a bridge to her core. He ran up the slimy limb, his feet slipping, his focus absolute. The siren reared back, her black eyes wide with surprise. For a moment he was face to face with the creature, and he saw not just a monster, but a prisoner, a being twisted and enslaved by Morris's magic, forced to feed on the very thing it craved. "I offer you a different peace," he whispered, and he plunged his sword into her heart. The shriek that followed was not of rage, but of release. It was a sound of pure, clean light breaking through millennia of darkness. The siren did not dissolve into gore, but began to unravel, her form dissolving into a shimmering mist that rose into the darkness of the cavern, like a soul finally set free. The oppressive weight in the air lifted. The discordant hum ceased, replaced by a profound, peaceful silence. The labyrinth, bereft of the power that sustained it, began to tremble. The walls groaned. Kaelen turned and ran, following the glowing thread back through the shifting passages. He stumbled past the fading illusions, his lungs burning, the world shaking around him. He burst out of the cave mouth just as the entrance collapsed in a cloud of dust and rubble. The 14 tributes stared at him, their faces pale with shock and dawning hope. Ilara was there, waiting. She saw the truth in his eyes. "It is done," he breathed, but the victory was not yet complete. The death of the siren had broken Moros's power. As they stood there, the obsidian palace began to crack, the green light within it flickering and dying. The island itself seemed to sigh, the perpetual mist beginning to thin as a ray of actual sunlight broke through the gloom for the first time in living memory. Moros, in his final moments, was not a shadow, but just a broken old man, his stolen power gone. His kingdom crumbled around him, not with a bang, but with a whisper. Kaelen, Ilara, and the tributes commandeered the tribute ship. They lowered the black sails and raised makeshift white ones, fashioned from the tribute's own cloaks. As they sailed away from the crumbling island of Acheron, the sun warm on their faces, Kaelen stood at the prow with Ilara by his side. He had gone into the labyrinth to slay a monster and had found instead a tormented soul to set free. He had gone to save his sister and had found a new purpose with the sorcerer's daughter. He held the silver spindle in his hand, the starlight thread now spent, a reminder that even in the deepest darkness, a single thread of hope, of truth, of love, could be enough to lead you home. And as the white shores of Helios appeared on the horizon, he knew that some labyrinths are not meant to be conquered, but to be understood, and that the greatest monsters are often the ones we create ourselves.